because we're competing for people's fun money. You know, there's no need to go to a roller coaster park, which some of your fans might disagree with me there, but you know, it's really not something that somebody absolutely needs. And I think that, you know, that really came out during the pandemic here. You know, we actually, unfortunately, had some parks shut down for, you know, a year, and that rippled through the industry. You know, we had a lot of people reaching out to one another, looking to collaborate on projects. You know, everybody was in the same boat. Everybody was trying to survive some of the difficult times, and it was great to see that, you know, you could reach out to somebody that normally you would deem a competitor.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing really well. How are you?
I am fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So glad to hear that.
Yeah. So I got a question for you.
All right.
So thinking about all the elements that create a great coaster ride, you know, the train that you're on, the track, the seats, the whole thing, what do you think is the most important?
Between the track, the train, the seats,
the elements, the whole thing, like all that coming together. You can get granular and talk about the wheels. I'm just curious, like from your perspective, what's the most important?
The mechanism that propels the train out of the station and into the ride, whether it's a traditional lift hill, launch, elevator system, or drop off a cliff.
Why is that the most important?
Well, if without that, then you're not gonna have anything at all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice.
Well, what about you?
I should have thought of that before I asked you that question.
Oh.
I would say the track.
Okay.
Is, and maybe I can't go, 100% in on that, but I would say for the most part, if you don't have a good track, if you don't have a good design, if you don't have a good layout, then you could have the best train in the world, but it's still going to be maybe a subpar ride. So to me, the track is really, really important.
I totally see what you mean. Tell me more, expand on that. Why, or what makes you think that?
Well, because I've been on some coasters that when you get back into the station, you're kind of like, meh, right? And I look back and I think, what made that so meh, right? Was it the train that I was in? Was it the rolling stock? Was it, other parts of the experience? Was it the track that was designed and built and then maybe maintained or not maintained over the years that ultimately, created that ride? And I think back to some of my favorite rides, and I think a lot of thought has gone into the track, a lot of thought and time and effort and energy. And I'm sure that's happened on every coaster, but the ones that I really feel like, give me the thrill and the experience I'm looking for, that somebody really had to put a lot of time and effort and energy into that to make it something that is really rewritable, really thrilling, really cool, and just fun.
And speaking about rides that are re-rideable, thrilling, cool, and fun, we have Jake Kilcup, the Chief Operating Officer for Rocky Mountain Construction, on the podcast today.
And, I wasn't even, obviously I was thinking about that a little bit when I asked you that question, but then when you asked it to me and I thought, really, the track is so important. And bing, 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 that really ties into our guest today, because one of the things that RMC is famous for is retracking coasters that may have, fallen into a heap pile, junk pile.
Yeah. And
I think back to a road trip I took in 2011 with a few friends. We were all living in Orlando, and we drove from Orlando to Dallas to ride the new Texas Giant, Rocky Mountain's first project where they retracked, converted from wood to steel, and added some pretty wild elements to it that completely transformed the ride experience. And I remember getting off the ride and thinking about some other rides that could use the RMC treatment that if I recall all the ones I listed, I think that all those boxes have been checked actually. But an amazing story. We had the opportunity to interview Taylor Bybee not too long ago. The filmmaker just came out with the new documentary, This Is How We Roll. So first of all, quick thank you to Taylor for introducing us and getting us in touch with Jake. So we can now look at it truly from the RMC angle and talk about what Jake does on a day-to-day basis, and we talk about the processes and what it's like being an executive with one of the most popular ride manufacturers in the world right now.
And when you say popular, it's not just with the parks, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of spilling over into the general public, where you could be walking around a park and see somebody with an RMC t-shirt on that you probably wouldn't see that with many other ride manufacturers. And I think what's so cool is how they've embraced the fandom of their coasters, and how that's really a part of their whole ecosystem when it comes to gathering feedback and talking to people and making announcements. And, it's not just about the park, but it's about the fans too. And I know a lot of other manufacturers do that as well, but it's really interesting to hear Jake's take on all that.
It is really cool, because if you think about the general public, they wouldn't know what RMC is. They don't know what the other manufacturers are. They think that the parks just build the rides themselves, and that's okay that they think that. But RMC has really been able to kind of charge forward into introducing themselves to the fans of the parks and the fans of the rides, and being able to build fandom where not too much existed outside of those who were much more familiar with the industry, or those who were enthusiasts with it.
Yeah. And I think what's also interesting about this conversation is talking to Jake about how he has kind of moved up and through the company. And, he started when the new Texas Giant project was going, and how it was a very small company back then, and how the demand for RMC coasters and the process has really, really ramped up, and how they've had to grow as a company, and some of those growing pains, but also some of the opportunities that have come with so many more projects.
Yeah, absolutely. So should we get to this interview with Jake Kilcup?
I think we should hit the dispatch button and take it away.
Well, to quote the title of one of your books, all clear.
And we are out of here.
Jake Kilcup from Rocky Mountain Construction. Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, thanks for sharing some time with us today. So Jake, let's get started here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your role with Rocky Mountain.
Yeah, so I started at Rocky Mountain a little over 12 years ago now. Came in on the Texas Giant project when the company was still pretty small. So I got to come in when we had about 10 employees. So wore a lot of different hats, filled in a lot of different roles, basically picked up a lot of balls that were getting dropped just based off of a young growing company learning how to do something for the first time. Big benefit of that is, I got to get my hands involved in a lot of different things, from the design process to the manufacturing process, all the way through the installation of the ride, dealing with the customers directly, dealing with all the subcontractors directly. So kind of just been able to get my hands in the middle of everything as this company's grown. And, as it's grown bigger and bigger, I had to take it a step back, not have as much control or I guess visibility throughout the whole company, trust people to do their jobs. And it's a little bit hard to do sometimes, but something that you got to grow with, and it can be hard to step back and let other people take over. But that's really where we're at right now is this company's really taken off, and we're just trying to bring in young, great talent that has a burning in their hearts for this industry. That's what we build ourselves on.
Awesome. Well, Josh and I have a burning desire to be in this industry and stuff. But so we're excited to talk to you. My question then is, so you didn't come from the attractions industry. A lot of the people that we've talked to, they grew up that way. They started, sweeping the park. You did not. So what was that learning curve like coming into a company that was, destined to build some of the greatest rides kind of ever?
Right. Yeah. I'd always been a fan of roller coasters. I hadn't specifically followed them, but I've always been kind of a adrenaline junkie to do a lot of action sports, dirt biking, snowboarding, things like that. So I always had a drive for roller coasters. I love that. I love that dropping feeling in my stomach, and I'll forever miss it because I don't really get it anymore. If I get it, I take note. So when I stepped into the industry, I had a pretty heavy design background. I have my master's degree in architecture, and I've done work on that scale. So it was a little bit of a change, but a lot of the processes are similar. And just learning the industry, and it's such a small industry, really, especially domestically. We all know each other, competitors, customers. We all really know each other, see each other, and one interesting thing about this industry is how much we're able to hang out with our competitors and get along with them, which a lot of times competition breeds cliques. You stay in your little section, but it was a pretty natural transition, especially coming into a company that didn't have a lot of the processes fully defined at that point. We had a start point, and we had an end goal, and how we got there was still being developed.
Can you talk a little bit more about that camaraderie amongst competitors? I think that is something that is, I don't know if that's unique to this industry or unique to ride manufacturers within the industry as kind of like a subset of the overall industry, but what exactly is that like, and why do you think that is?
Well, it is interesting because, it doesn't feel natural to go out and have conversations with your competitors, but at the same time, we all depend on one another. I mean, it's a industry that completely thrives on its safety and thrill levels. So it's important that we all perform at a high level. That's why we're all involved in ASTM and making sure we're setting the right standards for the design on the front end, so that we're all playing by the same set of rules and paying attention to the same safety guidelines, because we're competing for people's fun money. There's no need to go to a roller coaster park, which some of your fans might disagree with me there, but it's really not something that somebody absolutely needs. And I think that that really came out during the pandemic here. We actually unfortunately had some parks shut down for a year, and that rippled through the industry. We had a lot of people reaching out to one another, looking to collaborate on projects. Everybody was in the same boat. Everybody was trying to survive some of the difficult times, and it was great to see that you could reach out to somebody that normally you would deem a competitor, or there's competition that drives everybody to be better and lifts everybody up to a higher level, but doesn't require us to hate one another. And I think that's kind of where our industry is we're able to be with one another, see one another, but drive each other to do better.
Jake, can you talk a little bit about how that camaraderie does drive you to be better? I mean, I know you mentioned safety, right, and ASTM, and we're all making sure that we're as safe as possible. But at the end of the day, too, you might be competing for a bid with a particular park or things like that. So what is it about that camaraderie that does push you, to try something a little different or more out of the box, or, just something that people haven't seen before, that kind of thing?
Well, I kind of mentioned it a little earlier. I love that dropping feeling in my stomach, and I haven't been able to find it as often as I used to. So a lot of that is just driven by trying to do something bigger, better, something that nobody's seen before. I mean, it's the same thing that drives any of your action sports. You look at the progression over a pretty short period of time, and you see some major differences in freestyle motocross or something like that. I mean, guys pushing each other ends up with better product in the end. And that's really our goal, is to keep keep all these customers coming back, and looking for that better product. And when you see a competitor release something that you wish you had been able to come up with first or something, that hits you a little bit, and it wakes you up and gets you in the office a little early looking for that next thing.
Mm. So it's really cool to be able to have that drive and that search for that even more thrilling experience, to go find that stomach dropping feeling that you've now been kind of desensitized to, right? And then you get to play a role in now making that come to life. What is that process like? If you're out on your dirt bike and you do something and you're like, oh, I've never done that before, or never felt that way before, can we now incorporate that into a roller coaster element? What is that? What's the kind of the process of getting from A to B there?
It's a little messy, honestly. I mean, you do something up in the mountains or out in the sand dunes, and it's really it's a feeling that you're trying to recapture. So you're trying to give the general public this feeling that you normally wouldn't get unless you were doing something that came with a high amount of risk. And what we're trying to do is capture as much of that adrenaline rush that we can, while still eliminating the risk involved with doing something out there where you have no control systems, nothing protecting you. So it is a little bit messy, and as you kind of talk through it, it's not necessarily you're trying to create the specific element, but you're trying to capture the feeling that you had during that element. And that's one thing that working with Alan Schilke for the past decade is he's probably the best there is at being able to capture a feeling. And he can look at a layout and a ride, and he can really predict what it's going to be and how it's going to feel pretty close to what the real outcome is going to be. So a little bit of back and forth, talking with guys like Alan Schilke, Fred Grubb, and Joe Draves, some of these guys who've been in the industry for a long time and really understand things really well, and kind of get the idea of what our goal is. And then we sit down and try to figure out how we get there, how we capture that feeling, but in a safe, buildable structure.
I think that's one of the things that I'm really curious about, not being a designer, but being a roller coaster fan, is, I've played Roller Coaster Tycoon, and I can, design a roller coaster on there, but, to build something and to put in the effort and the design time and the build time to build something, that is, a large working machine. And then what if it doesn't make you feel like you want it to make it, to feel? So what's that process like? I mean, you can't build a Steel Vengeance, for example, in the backyard and say, hey, is this going to work? Part of that, I'm guessing, is computer design, but part of it probably is just people that have the experience and know that if you bend the steel this way, this is how it should feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's inherently risk in a layout design, and is it going to come out exactly the way I want? There's always something that cannot be fully prototyped. I mean, these are large gravity machines. As soon as they leave that chain lift, you really hope all your numbers were right, because if it doesn't come home, it's going to be a bad day for everybody. Thankfully, we work with great people here who do a great job of pulling those things off. But yeah, like a Steel Vengeance type of project, it's interesting because I know a lot of the fans probably throughout that build, there's a lot of anticipation, and we don't get that same anticipation because we're usually backs against the wall working as hard as we can to pull it off. So it's almost like opening day sneaks up on us on a lot of these rides. And then, the first day you get to go ride that thing. And that's when you really start to think about, okay, is this good? Because you go through the design, the initial design, the pitch process, right? And you've got these ideas that you're trying to show a customer and walk them through. And, some customers are extremely knowledgeable and understand and see what you're going with very minimal need to show them. Others aren't. Others are more on the business side, or focused on other parts of amusement, and that's how they got to the position they're in. And you have to kind of tell a story a little bit. So it's a little bit of a, you're an artist. You're trying to sell something that has to be explained, that has kind of an emotion and a feeling to it. So going from that process, and then you take a big break for however long the manufacture and install process is, and then you jump to open day, and then you think back to, oh yeah, that's the story we sold. Now let's go ride it and see how it feels. And it doesn't always feel exactly the way that you anticipated, but every ride has a little surprise to it, something that flew under the radar that people really weren't tracking, that ends up being a real powerful moment. And that's kind of what I live for, is trying to predict those little moments. Because it is interesting. I mean, a lot of people cling to the large element that they see, that the parks really put out there, and those elements are great. But I'm kind of an underdog type of guy, so I'm always looking for that little something that's going to grab you.
For sure. Yeah. I would say the last 10 seconds of Steel Vengeance is that little surprise right there. So no spoilers for those who, who haven't read it. But Jake, you talk about, or you mentioned, RMC's fans. And I think that can be a cool topic to talk about, because I feel like Rocky Mountain has more of a dedicated enthusiast base than perhaps other ride manufacturers, because it seems like it actually bleeds into the general public, which is almost a little unusual for the amusement industry. Can you talk about what it's like having fans of your product and how you're able to really engage with them to promote their advocacy?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's extremely humbling to have so many people care about what you do so much, that they're following it, they're keeping an eye on it, they're using, again, their fun money, their free time. Some of these RMC recreations or RMC, what if they did this ride, sort of things that you see on the internet. I mean, a lot of these people are very talented too, and very knowledgeable in what they're doing. And they've done I've seen some pretty incredible rides on YouTube that some of our fans have done. When you're walking around a park trying to sell a ride, walking with a customer for the first time, and you look around the park and you see your logo, that's pretty cool to see. I mean, the enthusiast group that we have, the community is obviously diehard. I mean, they absolutely love amusements, all different manufacturers and everything. And it's just so great to see. I never thought that we'd be selling merchandise. I never thought that, we'd have these advocates that are, anytime a park puts out a poll, what should we do next year? You've got this group, maybe a minority, but there's still a vocal minority, screaming out to the management team, like, let's get an RMC in here. Let's do this. I don't see the downside to it. And we get to interact with them a fair bit. I mean, people have been coming through Idaho every now and then on their way to Silverwood or whatever. And, we'll give people tours. We'll meet them. We'll see a lot of enthusiasts at IAPA, obviously, shows like that, media days, opening days. You get the chance to, and it's not hard to sit there and have a conversation with somebody that is so interested in what you do. It's pretty neat, and taking the time to sit down and talk with enthusiasts when they come through and have questions, it's invaluable to me. First of all, it's great. It's the least I can do to give back to them for how much they really pump us up out in the rides community. So we absolutely love that we have a diehard group of fans, and we're gonna do everything we can to keep them happy, keep putting out crazy rides.
Awesome. Selling more merchandise. So I had a question earlier. You talked about kind of getting into your role, and now as the company is growing, you're having to not necessarily step back, but allowing other people to make decisions and allowing other people to kind of do their thing, and probably delegating a lot more as the COO. So can you talk a little bit about that growth process, and what kind of things have you had to either learn or let go of along the way that maybe you didn't want to let go of, or it was hard to kind of let go of some of those processes?
Sure. When we were small, it was okay to do a lot of different things because we had one project going at a time. So you were able to manage that and deal with it. But as you grow larger and you want to be able to do multiple projects a year, you have to step back, you have to delegate, you have to hand off, and you have to trust people, which can be difficult, very difficult, and nobody's going to step in and do it the exact way that you would do it. You just have to trust and understand that you're bringing in somebody who's better than you at it. They specialize in it, and get out of their way. be there to overlook, discuss, what are your end goals? Why are we doing it this way? Question. That's a big thing in this company is if anybody ever wants to know why we're doing something within the company, they can ask and we will answer it. Down to the welders in the shop, I'll go out there, be working with them on a design, and they'll ask me, why are you telling us to do it this way? We think it'd be a lot easier that way. And we'll go back and forth. And I think that's really what allows us to build a lot of the things that we're able to build is the full team input throughout. We have a lot of very smart, very talented people in this company, and it would be tragic not to use their knowledge and to trust them that they understand their craft better than you do. So I think that's a big part of it. Trust is difficult. I'm a control freak, so it's really hard to let that go. But that's a personal growth issue right there. That's me needing to step back and allow people to make mistakes, just like Fred and Alan let me make mistakes as they were kind of training me up. They let me fall on my face and make a mistake, and then they dust me off, and we talk about how we got there and why it happened and how we prevent it in the future. So mistakes happen, but just can't be repeated, and can't be anything major.
Yeah.
Jake, I'm curious, and this is maybe a little bit more of a specific manufacturing question, but you talked a little bit about when you were going through that period of growth, that it was much different when you were focused on one project at once and then going to multiple projects at once. And I'm curious how you're able to sustain that high level of product integrity for each individual product while at the same time meeting the rapidly increasing demand that Rocky Mountain's been getting over the last several years.
Yeah, we just having to manage 2, 3, 4 times as much work as we had started out. It just requires processes. Things that we were already doing, but maybe weren't written down or didn't have specific guidelines on how to do them. Or, there's a lot of good project management software out there. There's a lot of tools out there that can be utilized. So it was more adopting those sorts of tools and processes and inserting them into the company, making sure that it wasn't going to change our culture to a point that we weren't us anymore. It was important for us to hang on to our culture because that's really what, that's the heartbeat of this company. But to refine that culture to a point where it's sustainable and repeatable, that was really important to us. So, like I said, there's tons of options out there. There's tons of tools. There's tons of processes. It was bringing them in, trying them out, and not being afraid to cut bait and abandon them if they weren't working for us.
So, Jake, how do you protect and preserve your culture, especially as you grow and get bigger? Because every person that comes in, they're going to have their own, personal agenda, and that's not a bad thing. But just everybody comes from a different place. So, how do you protect and preserve the RMC culture?
Yeah, when we add to our team, that's obviously an extremely important thing. We depending on the department, we'll do team interviews. We'll have multiple people in there talking to somebody. We'll really we'll ask you what you do for fun. What do you do outside of work? We're really looking for somebody that fits personally, because anybody that we bring in to have an interview is going to have the ability and the talent. So it's really down to, we're pretty lucky, really, in this industry. We do cool stuff for work. So it's not hard to find talent. It's not hard to find somebody who wants to work here. So we're able to be almost a little snobby and try to find that person that just, fits in well with us. Different personalities are great. There's not a problem there, but there's got to be some form of assimilation to our culture. But the different personalities obviously are a huge help, because that's what keeps the checks and balances. Different people coming in with looking at things from different angles, different perspectives is extremely important.
Yeah. And when it comes to RMC's culture, the world just got a little bit of a peek behind the curtain a little bit in the new documentary, This Is How We Roll. And we were fortunate to interview Taylor Bybee a few weeks ago from Coaster Studios. And we talked about kind of the filmmaking aspect and the production of the documentary. And it's absolutely fantastic. As you watch that, how did you react to that now, kind of being on the other side of it and being able to see it all come to life, and how Rocky Mountain, is portrayed and now like really in the spotlight in the public?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say Taylor, Scott, Sarah, they did an amazing job. That project was a lot of fun. It was invasive. It's inherently invasive, but they handled it really well, very professionally. And I think we were all thrilled with the outcome of that project. I mean, some of the details I mean, I really like the end credits. They had a song. They went all out. So props to them. Coaster Studios, great job. Watching that was a ton of fun because RMC is a little bit of a whirlwind, you know. I mean, I look back and I don't know where the time went, and this was the first excuse that we had to like kind of sit back. It was really great because we got to do it as a team. There was a big first screening up here at Silverwood, 10 miles from our facility, so all of our team got to be there, and we all kind of got to sit back and watch it together. And it was just a stroll down memory lane going, I know they focused on a couple of specific projects, but they did go through the growth of the company and talked about all these different projects. And, you could just hear people in the stands. Oh yeah, remember that? Oh, that was horrible. That was, there's all this great reminiscing that nobody just didn't have time for, we're on to the next. That's, we don't get a lot of time, honestly, to appreciate some of the projects we've been able to pull off. And, all the employees here at RMC should be extremely proud of themselves for what we've been able to accomplish. And I think that was a great opportunity for them to kind of show off to the rest of the world what they've been capable of doing, what our guys in the shop are able to build, what our guys in the field are able to install, and what our design team's able to come up with. So, that was a ton of fun.
Yeah. Well, and Jake, you just mentioned, the design, the build, the manufacturer, all those phases of the project. And I would imagine that at any one of those phases, if there's just something a little off, right, you get to the final ride and you're going to have a major issue. So maybe my question is around quality control or going from design to install. How do you make sure that what you designed is now being perfectly manufactured and then perfectly installed? Like, what's that process like?
Yeah. So we are pretty vertically integrated. So it is important that everything kind of runs really smoothly. We don't have a lot of room in the schedules typically for hiccups. We have an overall design, but we're detailing while there's one point where all three of those design, manufacture, and install are going on at the same time. So, making sure that everything runs smoothly is important, because if they don't receive their deliveries on site, then the whole thing shuts down and you got 30 guys on a job site. That adds up quick. And so, yeah, we have the speed and things running smooth. And then obviously we have the quality control that are, almost two opposing sides of the coin, right? You can't put the same person in charge of quality if they're in charge of production. So that's a big part of it is separating those two entities. We utilize a lot of new technology. We're always looking for some new way to measure, to verify, to prevent the possibility of a mistake. Our design process inherently has some checks and balances in it that would throw up red flags in the manufacturing side of things, which is nice. Right now I'm sitting about 100 yards from our manufacturing facility. So our designers are in the manufacturing facility daily, verifying things being built the way that they should be. Our manufacturers are reaching right back to us if they see any issues. We have a very open back and forth relationship since we're so close and since we're part of the same entity. If you were designing and subbing out to somebody, across the world, obviously there's inherent efficiency issues that you run into there that, we're able to circumvent. And it also helps on the quality control. Just the fact that everybody's part of the same company drives higher quality control awareness, I think. If you're building for somebody else, I hate to say that, but if you're building for somebody else versus yourself and you're going to be held responsible for something, you might take it a little bit more seriously. But we lean on our processes, our technological advances in the shop, and we bring in third party people to keep us honest on the quality control as well.
One thing I'm wondering too, Jake, is as many of us know, one thing that RMC is very well known for is transforming older coasters that have become a little bit more difficult from a maintenance standpoint or even waning popularity. And on the whole, the feedback has been so overwhelmingly positive. You look at Steel Vengeance compared to Mean Streak at Cedar Point, new Texas Giant, and so many other projects like that. Has there ever been any backlash to RMC for undoing what's already been done, or for people who maybe preferred I was a big fan of Gwazi at Busch Gardens, but also very excited to ride Iron Gwazi when it opens next spring. But curious if that ever has caused any friction, whether it's with the community, with with the industry, or even with those other manufacturers or designers.
Yeah, we have definitely had negative feedback, and typically it starts when we announce a ride, and then as we go through, we start to win people over, or there's going to be some of those people that they were a dedicated fan of that coaster, and there's just no way you're going to get them back. But we try to reach out to those people and let them know our intent. It's not our goal to destroy a ride. We do our best to try to keep the spirit of what that ride was. But for example, the Texas Giant, we were completely unproven. People didn't know what it was going to be in the end. We got a lot of hate mail, and that project that was a long install project as well. It wasn't just a one-off season. So at IAPA, we had a lot of people come in, and they weren't very happy, and some people were actually pretty upset, to be honest with you. And then in the end, that kind of went away. We stopped hearing from those individuals. I don't know if we won them over, or if it was over so that they moved on. I obviously I want to tend toward we won them over in the end, and maybe they saw that ride maybe wasn't sustainable in the long term, or was causing too much difficulties for the park, and this was a way to kind of hold on to the legacy of that ride while reinventing it. And Colossus was obviously a big one as well. I mean, that's probably one of the most historic coasters in the world. It's probably the most photographed and videotaped that coaster's a movie star. So, but we don't lose sight of that. That was a big thought process going into the design side of that thing. Is let's not lose what we have here. Let's find a way to make this somewhat historical, or tie back to the history of the ride, and just update it a little bit. And I think I'm becoming more and more of a coaster nerd, because I kind of have pieces of lumber from a lot of these projects stowed away at the house. So I definitely don't lose sight of the historic side of these coasters that we've had the opportunity to rework. So I hope in the end people enjoy what we're doing. Some of the old wooden coasters just need a little help sometimes, and that's all we want to do.
Yeah. I think by definition, having lumber from an old coaster at your house, that puts you in that nerd category. So welcome to the club. But I guess my question too, along that same line, is that, and I'll just speak as a coaster enthusiast, every RMC transformation that I've ridden, I think is absolutely needed for that coaster, because otherwise that coaster was probably going to get demolished, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at something like a Mean Streak at Cedar Point. I don't know what else they could have done to that coaster besides level it, and start over, because, again, just speaking as a coaster rider, it had gotten so rough for me that I wouldn't even ride it. You go to the coaster capital of the planet, and I'm not riding one of the big signature rides there. So when that got transformed, I was like, yes, now I can ride it again. So that's got to be part of the thought process too, for the parks that you work with, that this is either going to, we're going to have to start over, or we can kind of, tap into what we have and make it even better.
Right. I think that's absolutely the thought process of the parks is, let's not lose the legacy of what we have. And, let's face it, a big wooden coaster is just visually, it's a great aesthetic. It looks beautiful in a park, and it's diverse, right? I mean, it looks different than the other rides. And there's less and less of them being built. They're not being built as large, right? And you know, they really are more of a domestic thing. I mean, I know they are worldwide, but we have the lion's share of the large ones here in the U.S. So it's a little bit of an American feel to it, but we want to grab that legacy, hold on to it, and keep that aesthetic in the park, and just show people that, you know, just because it's wood doesn't mean it has to be tame. And if it needs to be tame, we can do that too. I mean, we definitely have a design philosophy that we want to stick to. We don't want to you know, stray too far from the RMC feel of a ride, but I think there's a lot that can be done with some of these wooden coasters. So I hope if parks out there are considering you know, tearing a ride down, that they would pick up the phone, give us a call first, because I think we can make a win-win for everybody.
Well, and that brings up another question as far as how that conversation goes, or how that conversation starts, because there's the renovation of the ride, of the refurbishment to convert the wood into the RMC steel. But many of your rides, especially over the last 5-6 years or so, have been built from the ground up. So do you go in, whether it's from a sales process or a relationship process, and say, hey, we can fix that, or you've got some unused land over here that we can put this in? What does that conversation look like generally with the parks?
Yeah, you know, it kind of depends on the park and the project. If somebody comes to us with an existing structure, you know, we have no problem pitching something to go on that structure. If they come to us with an open plot of land, you know, we'd love to attack that too. And a lot of parks have come to us with a less desirable open plot of land, something where the topography is a little bit challenging, and you know, we see the potential there. We know it's going to be a little bit difficult on the build side, but you know, there's nothing like a great terrain coaster going through the trees. So we love that opportunity, but you know, we just don't, you know, it's important for us to express to the parks that we can service whatever need you have. You know, a lot of it we get shoehorned into being the coaster reprofilers, just because that's how we got our start. That's how we got into this industry. But you know, we're capable of doing a ground up wood coaster, a ground up steel coaster, single rail track, double rail track. I mean, we can do a lot of different things. So that's one thing that we do, you know, make sure that we express to the park owners. You know, a lot of times we might get pulled in because they're specifically looking for a wood coaster or a reprofile. We'll be bidding against a totally different project, but you know, they're either going to go with us, or they're going to go with one of these other 5 manufacturers over here who do this thing. And we're just always trying to explain to those park owners that, hey, we can be included in that group, you know, 5 people over there as well. We can do this, but we can also do that. So, you know, whatever you're looking for, we're happy to be a part of it.
Jake, can you describe the RMC feel?
Yes, to some extent. So I always describe it as weightlessness. You know, we're definitely, I'm not, I mean, I like all sorts of roller coasters, but I'm a little less on the heavy G. Most people like to feel light rather than fat. I mean, most people, if they had the choice, would rather be on the moon than the bottom of the ocean. So that's really what we're pitching, is that flying through the air, coming out of your seat, weightlessness feel. And we want the layout to be less predictable when you're on it. You know, we really want you to not be able to know what's coming next, and the smoothness of our rides allow that ability. You know, you're not having to brace yourself like you were talking about on some of the old Woodies coming around that corner. You know, everybody's got a wood coaster riding stance, right? And, you know, you spread your legs out, you get your lap bar. You know, there's a way to do that on a specific old ride, and you kind of need to see what's coming. Otherwise, you get a little jostled. So we want to surprise people. We want people to have fun, and we want it to be rewritable. You know, that's a huge thing, is to hit a wide demographic. You know, I've got an 8-year-old. I got 3 kids, but I've got an 8-year-old. You know, I'm just starting to get him on coasters a little bit more, and it's awesome when grandpa or grandma can ride with grandsons. Great experience, great first coaster experiences. You know, and both people can handle it and ride it over and over again. That's huge.
So that's the RMC feel right there. Now, what is it like for you? What do you feel when you are observing, whether it's on opening day and people are experiencing it for the first time, or you ever just go and stand at an exit ramp of a ride just to do what's that like for you?
That's the best part of the job. I mean, that's where you just see all that hard work, thousands of hours of work, design, manufacturing, installation, all come out. And when people come into the station and are clapping, they're getting off, smiling, talking about jumping in line again. I mean, that is so satisfying to see that people, especially opening day, some people stand in line for 3-4 hours to ride your ride. Like that's an incredible statement. So whatever we're doing that captures that, I want to keep doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So Jake, when you talk about those rides that your son can ride along with your parents, for example, I know that there's a lot of science that goes into what an 8-year-old can take versus what an 80-year-old can take. So how do you balance that so it's thrilling enough for your 8-year-old, but almost tame enough for the grandparents, or vice versa? Like where are you putting that time and effort into the design to know how you're going to be able to appeal to both of those audiences?
Right. I mean, and it does depend on the project, because sometimes the park isn't looking to hit all that demographic. But I guess the idea is that we make it so it's rideable for the demographic. It's smooth, it's safe, it's fun. But admittedly, we have some rides out there that are probably too much for most younger children, and probably some older folks as well. But the type of older folks that are going to amusement parks on vacation probably can handle it in most cases.
So Jake, since you said that over the last several years, you have become a bit of a coaster nerd with the lumber that you have, at home, and that memorabilia there. What is your favorite non-RMC coaster that you've ridden?
Ooh.
I have a couple I'll have to mention. I can't give you an all-in favorite. But a couple that when I rode them made me take notice, grabbed my attention, was X2 at Magic Mountain. I also really enjoyed I-305 in Virginia. Those were really well done rides. And then Top Thrill Dragster was a lot of fun. Just who doesn't like to accelerate like that? That's where in the world can you ever feel that feeling? So that's a pretty incredible thing to be able to do. So
yeah, like
those are some of my favorites.
Unless you're like a jet pilot or something getting shot off of an aircraft carrier or something, right? You're not gonna get that kind of acceleration. So I have kind of a similar question, but you talked earlier about those little moments, those little surprises that maybe you don't put in the brochure, but those are the things that you look for. What are some examples of those?
Oh no, now I'm going blank on that too, of course. It wasn't it was an element that was, this is a horrible example, but it was definitely a known element, but the 0G roll up onto the cliff on Iron Rattler is just, it was so well executed. Alan nailed that design. I mean, and it was built well. And when you go through that, I mean, that is a unique feeling. I absolutely love that feeling. I also really love the step up underflip on Joker out at CGA or Discovery Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
There's just some elements that just kind of just grab you. Okay, here's a good one. Steel Vengeance. Coming out of the mid-course brake run, when like backseat getting ripped off that brake run just down into the structure and where you're going to live for the next 1,000 feet or so, like that, I absolutely love that feeling, just getting drug into that. I'm definitely a backseat rider. I like to get ripped around a little bit, but yeah, that was one part of the ride that I absolutely loved, and you could just see people almost like taking a breath as they got to the mid-course, and sorry, it's not over yet.
Right.
Well, sometimes the mid-course is the best surprise on any coaster. If you're not looking around, you're like, well, that was fun. Let's get off now. And then,
Yeah.
And then especially if you're in the back and then you get whipped back over. So Jake, this has been so much fun. We really appreciate the opportunity to get to talk to you today. If people want to, they want to reach out to you, they want to say hi to you directly, or they want to learn more about Rocky Mountain Construction, where would you send them?
Yeah, just go to our website, rockymtnconstruction.com, Rocky Mountain, but abbreviated, construction.com.
Great.
Excellent. Well, Jake, now you've got me wanting to go ride Steel Vengeance or, some other fun coasters like that. But this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time. And for everybody out there watching and listening, just remember that we are all attraction pros. Thanks for listening to the Attraction Pros podcast.
Make sure to subscribe so you can tune in when new episodes release. And even better, please leave us a review on iTunes.
For more information, visit attractionpros.com.